In December 2025, something shifted in software development. Not gradually, it happened almost overnight. AI agents stopped making constant mistakes. GitHub went from expecting 5% growth to seeing 3 times growth. 17 million AI-generated pull requests in March alone. I analyzed a long-form interview with a senior engineering leader at GitHub, and what came out of it completely changed how I think about building software with AI. There is one core principle that separates developers who are thriving in the AI era from those who are drowning in it, and it maps directly to a methodology we call Spec-Driven Development. This video is my breakdown of the most important ideas from that conversation. Let's go. Before late 2025, using an AI agent to write code felt like babysitting a toddler. You would give the agent a task, it would go left when it should go right. You would correct it, it would make another wrong turn. The whole experience was a correction process, not a creation process. The shift happened when the models got good enough that you could say, go ahead and play. And the output came back with high quality. The GitHub leader described it perfectly. It started feeling iterative, like you were actually building something together, instead of constantly fixing what the agent broke. He called this micro-delegation and micro-steering. Micro-delegation is when you hand off a clearly defined task and let the agent execute it fully. Micro-steering is when you step in, lightly, to adjust direction. This is the foundation of productive AI-assisted development. If you do not understand the difference between these two modes, working with agents will feel expensive and chaotic. If you do, it becomes a genuine creative superpower. Here is one of the most important ideas from the interview. GitHub's design philosophy is now built around 2 principles. Lower the floor, raise the ceiling. Lowering the floor means making software creation accessible to people who never wrote a line of code. GitHub is moving toward conversational interfaces, mobile-first development, and agents that remove every friction point between an idea and working software. Raising the ceiling means giving professional developers tools to do things that were impossible before. More automation, better agents, faster iteration, without losing depth or quality. The analogy that hit me hardest: Mozart was probably not the only musical genius alive in his era, but most of those geniuses never had access to a piano. What is happening right now is that we are putting a piano in front of millions of people who never had one. For you as a developer or a builder, this is your moment. The floor is lower than it has ever been. The ceiling has never been higher. The question is what you are going to build. Here is where it gets concrete. The best analogy I have ever heard for why spec-driven development is the critical skill of this era came directly from this interview. The leader compared AI-assisted development to a 3D printer. When you 3D print something, you spend most of your time on the CAD drawing, the detailed technical specification. You define every dimension, every constraint, every material property. Once that design is right, you hand it to the printer. The printer executes. You review the output and refine. Working with AI agents is exactly the same. The quality of your output is determined almost entirely by the quality of your specification. A vague prompt produces vague code. A precise spec, with context, constraints, edge cases, and acceptance criteria defined up front, produces output that is close to production ready on the first pass. This is spec-driven development. You shift your investment from writing code to writing specifications. The agent writes the code. You review, steer, and iterate. He put it this way: he spends more time on the CAD drawing than on the printing process. The agent handles the tokens. He handles the design. So what does a strong spec actually look like in practice? 4 components. Every spec I write now includes all 4. First, intent. What are you building and why? What problem does this solve for which user, in which context? Second, constraints. What must this never do? What are the security requirements, the performance limits, the architectural rules that must not be violated? Third, context. What does the agent need to know about the existing code base, the business rules, or the system architecture before it writes a single line? Agents do not know your system. You have to tell them. Fourth, acceptance criteria. How will you know if the output is correct? What tests must pass? What behavior must be observable? When you give an agent all four of those, you are not prompting, you are specifying, and that distinction matters enormously because the interview was crystal clear on one thing. You do not want your bank application vibe coded. You do not want your production system built from a vague prompt and optimism. For prototypes, for exploration, acceptable. For anything that ships to real users, you need the spec. GitHub is redesigning itself around what their head of design calls AX, Agentic Experience. The idea, instead of a user jumping through 50 UI screens to accomplish a goal, the agent navigates the interface on your behalf. You declare the intent. The agent handles the execution. But here is what makes it different from just chatting with a bot. It is bidirectional. You interact with the canvas and affect the agent. The agent reads the canvas and affects the UI. It is a real-time creative feedback loop. The analogy used was Picasso at a canvas. You are painting on one side, talking to the agent on the other side, and both of you are shaping the final output together. For developers, this is the future of your development environment. You bring the judgment and the creative intent. The agent brings the execution speed. Neither replaces the other. They amplify each other. This is also why the spec matters even more in an agentic environment. The better you articulate your intent, the better the canvas looks at the end. GitHub named their product Copilot, not Pilot. That was a deliberate choice in 2021, and it remains their core position today. The human is always at the center of the creative process. The self-driving car analogy from the interview, you do not manage every sensor. You do not control every wheel rotation, but you decide where you are going. The car handles the mechanics. You provide the judgment. This is the right mental model for AI-assisted development. The goal is not to maximize how many agents you have running in parallel. The leader himself said he usually has 1 to 3 things going at once. The goal is to maximize creation, to build things that matter faster with better quality than you could alone. Paralyzing yourself to no value is not the vision. Creation is. And the skill that makes you a better creator in this environment is exactly the skill at the core of spec-driven development. Knowing what you want, articulating it precisely, and giving the agent what it needs to execute. Here is what I want you to take from this. If you are building software today with AI or without, the most valuable skill you can develop is not learning to write more code. It is learning to write better specifications. Start with the 4-part framework: intent, constraints, context, acceptance criteria. Write that before you write a single prompt. Give it to your agent. Review the output. Iterate on the spec, not just the code. The floor has never been lower. The ceiling has never been higher. The interview I analyzed is linked in the description. I strongly recommend listening to the full version. If spec-driven development is something you want to go deeper on, subscribe. I cover practical AI development workflows every week, focused on what actually works in production. Drop a comment. What is the hardest part of working with AI agents in your current workflow? I read every single one.